Well, this is our last fighter verse of the year, the very last fighter verse for 2020. And our fighter verse to end the year, it's really appropriate. It is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. Now, if you're familiar with 1 Corinthians 13 at all, you might know it as the great love chapter. And it's really a chapter that is well known at weddings. Now, what's really important before we read 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, is to remember this. This is not a chapter for weddings. This is not a chapter to be read specifically at marriage ceremonies. 1 Corinthians 13 is a part of a trilogy. 1 Corinthians 13 is a chapter that actually begins with 1 Corinthians 11. So 1 Corinthians 11, 1 Corinthians 12, and 1 Corinthians 13 all go together. That is, they're all part of the same context. And in 1 Corinthians 11, the Apostle Paul first addresses to the Corinthian church, a local church. This is a local church in Corinth. And he's writing quite a lengthy letter to them. The church in Corinth is known as a messed up church. They're just not doing anything right. They have a lot of problems. And in 1 Corinthians 11, he tells this church in Corinth, do you know when you guys get together, when you gather together, it's for the worse. It's not for the better. And so it's quite interesting that Paul insinuates this, that when we get together as a church, it is to be for the better. So then he writes 1 Corinthians 11, then 1 Corinthians 12, which talks about being members one of another, and then comes 1 Corinthians 13, the great love chapter. So that all fits together in what it means to gather together for the better. And he ends it on this note, the great love chapter. Now let's read verse 4. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant. So again, what is to describe our gathering as a local church? It ends in chapter 13, love. And this is a agape type love. So I want to ask myself this and ask you this and have you ask yourself this. Take a look at 1 Corinthians 13. And ask, maybe do this. Instead of the word love, put your name. And when it comes to Calvary Community Church, or if you're not a part of Calvary Community Church, you're a part of some other church, does this describe you in your relationship with the other members of your local church? If you are a part of Calvary Community Church, does this describe you and how you relate to the other members, the other people of our precious assembly? Am I patient? When it comes to others, first in my local church, am I patient? Am I kind? Do I get envious? Am I boastful? Am I arrogant? Again, all dealing with the interpersonal relationships found within the local church. And of course, we can expand this. Does this describe my relationship with other Christians? We can expand it further. Does this describe my relationship with unbelievers? But first and foremost, the context is how this local church in Corinth is working together. And it ends on that chapter 13 of love. So I'm going to ask, maybe take time to read 1 Corinthians 11, 1 Corinthians 12, and then 1 Corinthians 13, just to get the context in your mind when it comes to verse 4. And then after reading 1 Corinthians 13, go back and read verse 4. Let's memorize it. Let's put it in our minds, put it in our pockets. What does God's word say? Let's hide it in our hearts so we may not sin against him. And then instead of the word love, put your name in there and ask yourself, does this describe me as I work together with the people in the local church that I belong to? Keep fighting and use this verse to fight this week.